Okay, in this next video, I'm going to walk you through the steps for working with wall assemblies. We'll start with the exterior wall assembly, and I have an image here that describes a similar wall. This isn't exactly what we have, but just to kind of illustrate what it is exactly we'll be doing here, this 3D image is perhaps a little helpful. So what we have here is a wood framed structure. In between these studs, there's an insulation layer. And there's a number of other layers, including a space for drainage, but on top of it, or rather outside of it, so this is the exterior side of the wall, we have some rigid insulation, and then we have the finish. So this is described as a glass mesh reinforced lamina and synthetic stucco finish. Sometimes this is referred to as something called EIFS, which is short for, or the acronym for, an exterior insulation finish system. But basically, this is going to be kind of what we're constructing in Revit. So I'm going to now go to Revit. So I am currently in the level 1 floor plan, and there's my grid. And I'm going to go to the architecture tab, and I'm going to go to wall, and it's going to be a structural type. Over here on the left, if you click on the basic wall, whatever wall appears when you open this, we're going to base this on an exterior, and there again is this EIFS, exterior insulation finish system on metal stud. I'm going to choose that. I'm going to edit the type, and let me just make sure this window is visible. Okay. Now I'm going to click on edit, and we can take a look at the structure. So the wall assembly has 3 components. One is what's on, basically acting as the structural layer typically at the center of that wall assembly. And then above that, we have what's happening on the exterior side, and then what's happening on the interior side. So what changes are we going to make here? So this is referred to as a metal stud, or this is the type that's been assigned to this wall. And we are going to click on it, and let's see what happens when we type in wood. Let me figure out what type of wall, or what exactly to categorize that. Okay, we are going to search for something called softwood. Softwood lumber is what we're going to use, and say okay. So softwood is commonly what is used when you're framing anything, at least in the contemporary sort of context. Softwoods are, generally speaking, woods that are that have needles, not leaves, and that is the common type of wood for framing. In this case, the dimension will actually be 5.5 inches. So a 2x6 is what we'll be using as our primary framing member size, and the actual size of a 2x6 is 5.5 by 1.5. All right, now let's go to some of the other layers here. Now we could have more insulation that's located within the structural layer. That complicates things a little bit with the wall, because we have this whole layer for this membrane here. And one of the things that you'll encounter as you continue your studies is that controlling the location of moisture within the wall is a really critical thing. If moisture somehow gets trapped, then you are going to have condensation, and you're going to cause a deterioration of the materials inside the wall. So if we were to add more insulation on that interior part, so in this yellow zone here, we may have to sort of make adjustments to where the membrane layer is occurring. So we're not really going to get into that level of detail. However, I do want to change the thickness of this finish. We're going to make this 5/8 of an inch thick. 5/8. And that will make the wall a little bit thicker, but you can see here the total thickness of the wall is quite thick, and it's because of all this insulation that's occurring on the exterior side of the wall. So I'm going to go ahead and click on OK. And again, we're not really going to get into much of the detail kind of rationale for the walls. We just want to show something that is realistic. And one more thing that I'm going to do, I should have done this while I was still in there, edit the type. I'm just going to rename this one. I'm going to call it wood stud. Okay, so that will be the wall type that we use for our exterior walls. Okay, now, given that we're working on a hotel or motel, one of the issues that you want to be aware of when you're doing things like this is something called noise transmission. So in other words, it's really not good when you're able to hearing things that are happening in other rooms. And so between the different units, you may have a wall that has some resistance to the passage of sound. So in this case, we'll be using this wall type for our walls that are separating rooms. And you can see the thickness here. So this is a thicker wall than you might normally have, but what it has, and it's listed down here, a layer of 5/8 inch gypsum wallboard, something called a resilient channel. So that's this layer that looks like a little dashed line there. And that resilient channel is helping to sort of cut down on the passage of sound through the wall. This kind of squiggly line represents insulation, and that insulation in this case is doing work not to keep heat from passing through the wall like you would have on an exterior wall, but it is helping with the passage of sound. So this whole assembly is designed to meet a certain minimum criteria for the passage of sound. And then, so it's also wood studs, and you can see here it says 2x6, so it would be the same size as we're using on the exterior walls. And then on this side of the wall, it says 2 layers of 5/8 inch gypsum wallboard. So this is going to be the wall that we construct for this, just the walls that are happening between units in the hotel, between the different hotel rooms. Okay, so in the Revit file, you're going to go to wall structural, and this one is a structural wall because the floor framing will be bearing on it. Let's see here. So I'm going to click here and I'm going to scroll down till I get to, let's work with this interior 5.5 inch partition and edit the type, edit the structure. Okay, so let me cancel this, and I'm going to rename this one I'm going to call this between rooms. Okay, and go back to edit. Oops. All right, and click on edit here. And so I'm going to put the cursor on 2, and I'm going to insert a layer here. This isn't structure, it's actually a finish layer. It doesn't really matter, finish 1 or finish 2. And then here, I'm going to add metal, type in metal here. Let's see what comes up. Metal furring, let's call it metal furring, and we'll say, okay. And this is going to be 1/2 inch. So these are those resilient channels. Okay, and the structure, I'm going to add another layer here. This one is going to be thermal or air layer. I'm not sure how well this is going to translate here. And by the way, let's click on this one and let's find that same softwood lumber. Okay, this is also going to be 5.5 inches. And here, let's see what happens when we type in insulation. Rigid insulation, fiberglass. Let's do this one. And let's just call this 5 inches of insulation. And on the other side, so we have the 2 layers of gypsum wallboard. So I'm going to say, okay. All right, so here's the problem with it. It added a lot of thickness to this. So I think for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to eliminate this, delete it, and where this would come up is in a detail, and we would just add the bad insulation to it. What we're really concerned about is the whole overall thickness of this wall. So I'm going to say okay, and apply and okay. So now I've got the 2 wall types, one between the rooms, and we'll also be needing another wall type that's not between rooms, but let's say between the bedroom and the bathroom within a unit, for example. And for that one, we can use probably a 4 3/4 inch wall. Let's just look at the assembly here. We have gypsum wallboard, we have softwood lumber, and we have gypsum wallboard. So this is a thinner wall. We wouldn't have that insulation that's acting as a sound transmission thing or anything like that. It would just be a standard wall. So I'm going to say cancel, and I'm going to rename this one partition non-structural, at least so I have some kind of clue that these are the wall types that I need. Now, with a project like this, you would actually have probably a lot more wall types, but for the sake of simplicity, we're going to have the exterior wall. That was the first one we made. The second one is the wall that's between the motel room units, and then just one that is an interior wall that will be between various rooms within those units and in other places around the project. Right, so those are the 3 wall types that we'll start with. We may add a few more as we go along, but that will allow you to get a lot of the structure in place.